Hello, everybody. I just wanted to make that promised video about how to make brushes for Procreate. This is just a painting I have pulled up of mine, just something from recently. I wanted to first kind of demonstrate why it's so useful to be able to make your own brushes because every single brush that you see in this painting was made by me, and I wouldn't have been able to get these effects if it weren't for the fact that I make my own brushes. And even the well, actually, you know what? I'll take that back. The ones on the edges, I don't think I actually made those, the little splotch things, but you can totally make something like that. I've made stuff like that before. I like the effect from a brush pack that I had gotten, but for the actual painting itself, like these are all made by me, you know. And it's very useful because although it's you can get some really nice ones from brush packs and stuff like you see over here, and sometimes you can you know like go over here. This is what I used for that effect, was from this one. And I have lots of brush packs, as you can see. you know Even you know what, I think the rain effect as well. I think the rain effect was from a brush pack as well. But the base painting itself, like this canvas, the canvas paintbrush and all of that, and the pencil brush and all of that, that's ones that I made. So um, yeah, so the reason that it's so useful to be able to make your own brushes is because um, you can get some specific effects that you want. The brushes that you have might not give you the effect that you want. Even if you're buying a bunch of brush packs, it's nice to be able to make your own brushes because it'll save you money as well. Um, but even the default ones, the I will admit I rarely use the default brushes in Procreate because I kind of hate them. you know, I really do not like the default brushes. Um, and This is going to be kind of a double feature because I want to go over something else as well, which is pen pressure. Um, so yeah, anyways, this is my brush library of just brushes that I have made. There's tons of brushes that I've made over time, you know. And this canvas painter, this is one of my favorite brushes right now. I just love this brush. It's just so fun to paint with. And this is my favorite brush to draw with. It's this pencil brush, I made this one myself as well. And my water pen, this is another one that I use all the time, you know. So yeah, obviously airbrushes, you use airbrushes for various purposes. Yeah, I wanted to demonstrate how to use the Brush Studio. Now, obviously you want to make a new brush and stuff, and I'll just show you kind of what everything sort of does. The first tab, this is the spacing. Sometimes I like to actually lower the spacing because it kind of creates a cool effect. I've seen a lot of people who do this, and I used to do that all the time. I didn't do it. I haven't been doing upping the spacing like that as much recently because I kind of like having like a smooth look to the actual brush strokes and kind of having the texture in just the layering of the brush strokes rather than in the brush strokes itself. But yeah, and then this is jitter and fall off and all of that. Now, that's kind of it's kind of the basic first panel, of course. Now, I think what I'll kind of talk from most to least important, I guess. So I think the next most important thing is probably the rendering mode, It's because different rendering mode will impact like how your brush behaves, and how it layers. Um, Blending, it's like a cumulative, so as you use blending, like as you keep going over the same brush stroke, it'll keep darkening. Same with intense blending. That's really good for like pencil, like I've found. I really love using that with pencil brushes. Now glaze, intense glaze, it kind of does the same thing, but if you lower the opacity, it doesn't. Um, you see, here's the opacity slider, and basically, if you use a like one of these, here we go. If you use one of the blending ones here, then if you lower the opacity here, you can still go full dark. You just have to press harder, but it just basically makes it feel like um, you can draw lighter. So that's why I love using blending mode for pencils. Whereas with glaze, and I'll go over to the water pen real quick. That's a good example. See the water pen, it's using one of the glaze ones. I like using uniform glaze. It's a nice in between. And basically, if you lower the opacity when you're using a glaze option, it's always going to be transparent even when you're pressing hard. And then you go over it again, and oh, you're adding another layer, kind of a thing. And that's nice for like a watercolor type effect. So yeah, and so flow is basically, this is like, it kind of softens it. And I guess if you put it on light glaze, it kind of mostly just affects the opacity, I guess. So it, you know, but it's basically like, how intense uh, how intense the flow is. The opacity is just overall like making it more transparent or more opaque. Whereas flow is like how are these individual shapes layering. Because when you turn up the spacing here, you can see like kind of it's actually like reducing the opacity of each shape, and it kind of like affects how they overlay over each other. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's the best way I can kind of explain it. And now I think and then wet edges. Um, this kind of does this where it like layers it kind of like ink or something. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting effect. A lot of these you'll have to just kind of experiment with on your own, but burnt edges is kind of interesting because it's kind of hard to see actually. Trying to come say, yeah, there you go. But that's kind of what burnt edges does. It kind of layers it like this. It kind of makes it look like acrylic paint or something, but you usually don't want to have burnt edges up too high because then it'll kind of like affect the values too much. But so yeah, those are those are kind of the main two. Now, I think the third most important would be, let's see here, Apple Pencil, which is where you kind of have the pressure sensitivity like um, settings and stuff. Now, as I said, flow is kind of like how much it you know well, flows, how intensely the pencil affects the flow, and it kind of like makes it softer. Whereas with opacity, it's just simply like, if I were to do this, then you see the opacity only affects the opacity and not the softness of it, if that makes any sense. And bleed works similarly to flow in a way, but it actually kind of lowers the alpha or of the like the alpha clipping, I guess you can call it. Let me get you a better example here. This will show you kind of how bleed works. But you see, with bleed, it actually like affects like the texture itself. So whereas with this, it's just making it softer or whatever. With this, it's actually like affecting the texture. Um, and let's see here. I guess I'll stay on this one for now. Oh yeah, and obviously these are the brush properties here, where maximum size, minimum size, blah blah blah, maximum opacity, minimum opacity. This setting here, the orient to screen, this is very important. So um, if you're like rotating the canvas like this, and the brush is like rotating weirdly, in this case it looks fine, but if I were to turn orient to screen on, see, it's looking weird. So if you're having that problem, it's because orient to screen is turned on. So you want to turn that off if you're having that problem, so that when you rotate it, it actually behaves as you expect it to. And what else? Stamp preview, that's not really important. You can play with that. Now let's go over to grain. I think grain and shape are kind of like, you know, comparable in their importance. I guess I'll go over shape first. I have this set to follow stroke, and so if the pencil rotates, it kind of like it follows the direction of wherever the pencil's going. So kind of looks like that. But you can have it set to azimuth to where it follows specifically where the pencil is rotated. So if you go like this without rotating the pencil at all, it does that. But I prefer it to follow the stroke so that it actually spins with once, like if you're drawing like this, it'll spin with it. Scatter, this like rotates out each individual shape. Count, this is like you're increasing um, the number of shapes per, like basically duplicates each shape. And count jitter. And now this is interesting because when you use count jitter, it like it's basically kind of like affects like makes the opacity a bit random. So if you want to get something like that, you can. Randomize, this randomizes the rotation of each stroke. I have flip X turned on so that because otherwise the canvas texture would be a little too much. So I'd have flip X turned on, and that also like makes it less like I don't know. It just looks better to me when I turn flip X on, but it basically flips every other um, shape on the X axis, but flip Y does the same thing just on the Y axis. And now this, you can manually control the rotation of each shape, and if it's not behaving as expected, it might be because of orient to screen is turned on. But yeah, and then you can change the flatness of each shape, so you can see that up there. And then the pressure roundness, this is cool because this means that the pen pressure will actually control the flatness of the or the how the shape of the the shapes, yeah, the shape of the shapes. um, and then tilt, it does the same thing. It's just using pen tilt instead of pressure. So anyway, those are the main things for shape. And if I'm glossing over things, that just means that those things are not really that important. You can just kind of play with them and figure it out on your own, and it really doesn't matter. Um, Now grain, this is what the texture is of your brush. So in this case, I have a canvas texture, as you can see. Um, Movement, it's kind of like if I have movement up, it kind of like makes the texture kind of move, like kind of almost like a brush, like real bristles or something. It kind of like makes the texture stretch along whatever direction the brush is going. If that makes any sense. So it kind of like makes it look like you're using bristles or something. And then scale, obviously, a scale of the texture. And sorry, I keep going back in order to reset it so that I can reset it back to how it was. Zoom, that does kind of what you expect. It zooms the texture. Rotation, now this is interesting because it'll rotate the texture around. And if you have these turned off, you can really see it. Um, See that? And movement, turn that off. But yeah, something like that. And depth, this is like the kind of works similarly to bleed, um, but kind of like affects like the transparency of the texture, and depth minimum, depth jitter. This could makes it random, so this is kind of an interesting effect here. I think Anthony Jones does this a lot. Well, not that actually. He uses color jitter a lot, but it's a similar idea. And let's see here, offset jitter. That just kind of makes it to where actually I don't really know what offset jitter does. I think what oh yeah, you know what, offset jitter basically randomizes the offset of the texture every time you put the stroke down. That's what it is. So instead of it being like the same area of the texture every time, it randomizes it. Yeah. Now these blend modes, these are very important because these are what cause these are kind of the methods by which you're using these textures, like how it affects the opacity of the brush itself. So you can see like that. I use these a lot. I usually use height, um, either height or multiply. Those are usually the ones that I use the most. And yeah, those are the most commonly used for me because height basically it's like a yeah, it works really well in a lot of contexts. And yeah, and then these filterings, it's just the texture filtering. Okay, so and then texturize, this is like if you just want it to be a flat texture like this, which kind of looks bad to me. Pretty much never use that. I just like using moving. So yeah, and then let's see here. Already went over that. I guess let's talk about taper real quick. Taper is I like to use taper a lot of times just to kind of correct a glitch actually because um, sometimes if you're drawing like you could see like down on that brush stroke there, there's a bit that's like just rotated weirdly randomly, and so I will actually Um, I like to, where is it? Kind of like to correct that. It's not showing up. 1 second. I don't know. It looks fine when I'm doing it like that. But anyway, I think with you know what it's with this one. I legitimately just wanted the size to kind of vary. That's why the taper is up so high. Um, Kind of creates a nice like brushy look to it. But basically, taper does what you expect it to do. When you do this, it makes the tips um, different color, different in size or opacity. You could do that. Pressure, and then this tip it rounds the taper. Um, so what I was saying before is that sometimes Procreate has a glitch where like the first shape of a brush stroke is just like rotated weirdly or kind of like sized weirdly. And oftentimes I'll use taper to correct that, um, just to like basically make that first make that first shape like disappear. You could see that. So it kind of like uh, yeah, just kind of fixes things sometimes. I don't know if you're I don't know if I'm really explaining it all that well, but just seems to work well for me. But anyways, and touch taper, I don't really know what touch taper does. I guess touch taper is like if you're using your finger to draw, then like I don't know why you would do that, but yeah. So it's for if you're using your finger. Um, it's kind of a little bizarre to me, but there you go. But it doesn't really. I don't know why you would use your finger. Um, I just like to use my pencil for everything. So, but yeah, there's that. Then stabilization. This is a lot here. So there's a lot of different methods by which you can stabilize. You can also you can stabilize the pressure. So as you press harder, it like kind of slowly changes opacity. Whereas this is how it looks like if it's just exactly how I was pressing, and then this just kind of like smooths out the pressure, you know, like the pressure opacity or whatever. I have a slight bit of stabilization turned on, I guess. I don't know why. It's like it only really needs to be on 0%, but this is kind of like you can see this kind of does that. Um, I don't really like to use smoothing because it just kind of makes me feel like I don't have enough control over my brush. But there's that. I guess it's a bit useful. I pretty much never use it though. So yeah, it might be good for like line art though. So that might be something to look into. Or it might be good for like some like natural medium kind of stuff. If you're trying to create like an oil paint kind of brush or something. Speaking of which, let's go over a wet mix. So um, this is interesting. So you kind of want to do some. You know what? I'll just duplicate this brush so that I can actually demonstrate this. So I'm gonna do some of this just to show it off. But it's kind of like creates some nice painterly wet effects here. So it kind of feels like you're using some kind of like it kind of smudges it as you're painting, so it kind of feels like you're actually using like watercolor or some oil paint that's been like watered, uh, what is the term? You're using some oil paint that's been thinned out, I guess, with like some linseed oil or something, or something like that. So that kind of creates a cool effect, and that works really well, especially with a light with a glaze blend mode. So yeah, there's that, and that actually looks really cool. So I might actually save this one. Canvas Painter Wet. There you go. Because I might actually use that for like creating some cool base shapes that I kind of paint over or something, and then I go in with this one and start actually like refining it or something. Yeah, that's giving me some cool ideas. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I like it a lot. All right, I just made a new brush that I'm gonna use. Nice. Yeah. I'll just put this down here actually, 'cause I don't really use the gouache brush much. Gouache flat brush. But yeah, I'll put this down here as well. I like to organize my brushes after a while because I realize, oh, I don't use this one ever, so I'm just gonna put it lower. So yeah, I'm liking that. Yeah, and it kind of like blends into it. That is a really nice effect. I really like that a lot. Yeah. Anyway, I'll play with that after I'm done with this video. But yeah, that's kind of what wet mix does. You can kind of play with the way stuff works here. Blur jitter, pull, etc. All right, so there's that, and I'll just duplicate this one real quick, and then kind of do the last demonstrations here. So color dynamics. Um, this is really good, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Um, I'll just increase the spacing just to make it a little more clear. So, um, stamp color jitter, color saturation, lightness. There you go. So you can see kind of what it does. Um, you're kind of jittering the color of each stamp. I guess it would be called a stamp rather than a shape. I was calling it shape earlier, but I guess you would call it stamp. But do something like that. Um, Anthony Jones uses that kind of effect a lot. He just uses it with hue mostly, I think. Um, I'll do something better here. I'll do hue here, a little bit of saturation. See that? Kind of creates a jittered effect here. Let me pick a better color. It's less ugly. And I do not know why I have burnt edges turned on for this, but there you go. I'll undo that on this as well because I accidentally saved that. But yeah, that's what that does. Kind of creates a jittery effect to the color and the brightness and everything. So yeah, so that's mostly what we have here. So and on properties and stuff, you got smudge pull. This is for when you're using it as a smudger. I really like to smudge sometimes to kind of create some nice like blurred effects, especially with the canvas brush. It just really looks cool. But yeah, so now that I've kind of shown you all of that, I'm going to demonstrate by creating a brush. So I'm gonna create a brush from scratch here. So what do I want to make? Usually I will start with the shape, and there's a source library. This Procreate comes with a bunch of default shapes and grain options, grain texture options. So first of all, I will choose a shape that I like, and I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of create like a full on, you know, gonna create like a paintbrush, like some oil paints or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll should have it affect the bleed quite a bit and the opacity maybe a little bit. All right, so something like that. You know what? I think I'm gonna change the blend mode. I'm gonna change the blend mode to that real quick, and then I think I'm going to change this because I don't think that's actually helping me here. And I'm going to change this to azimuth. There you go. That's looking better. See? And now I will choose a grain. And let's see here. I guess we can use kind of a canvas, you know, or maybe let's see here. Let's see what options we have. Acrylic undercoat. That tends to work pretty well. Acrylic undercoat. I like that. Um, and yeah, so what I'll do is I'll change this to height because I like using height when I'm making like bristles or something. And then to change this to where the see this the brush actually affects the depth here, like how hard you press with the brush actually affects the depth. So I'll do something like that. And let's see. Yeah, I can't affect the. Oh, okay, so let me redo that real quick. So something like that. That way when you press lighter, it kind of like, yeah, there you go. Something like that. Kind of has like a cool, like acrylic kind of look to it. And now I'm going to go over to this and I'm actually going to increase the wetness ever so slightly. And then I'll turn the pull down. Grade that. Just a slight bit of wetness. So that it really feels like a oil paint that's been you put like turpent or whatever it is, linseed oil or whatever in. I'll have some charge, I guess, to not actually tack. Where is it? Oh yeah, actually blur. I should enable blur as well a bit. All right, let's see what that looks like here. Let's see. Okay, yep, it's kind of a cool effect. Let me turn this off real quick. Down here. Okay, so let's fix that. Let's fix that kind of weird effect there, where it's kind of like pulling it. If I can, and like obviously I'm figuring things out too as I'm doing this, but kind of the point of this video is not necessarily to be like, here's exactly how to make a brush. It's more so like to show you that it's really not that scary, It's not, it's really not scary, you just make, you just do, try your best, and do what you can, and it'll all work out. You know what, I think if I were to flip it, no, yeah, it's okay. So if I were to do a, you know what, I think I'm going to make, oh yes. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay. So if I can actually change how the pressure sensitivity affects the wetness as well, which is kind of nice. Okay. Oh yeah. I fixed it, I think. Yeah. There you go. Grade. Smooth. Yep. I figured it out. So grade, you want to have grade like turned up pretty much all the way. I guess, yeah. Let me just test what that looks like here. Yeah, okay. That's pretty cool. Now I kind of want it to be a little smoother, so I'll do blur. There you go. And then turn that pressure sensitivity off, actually. Attack. Then okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, there you go. It's kind of a cool effect there. And now I will change the, I think I'm going to change this to, there you go, intense glaze. That might work a little better. well, I don't know. Uniform glaze works pretty well. So if I go to grain, let me try out multiply with this one actually. I think that actually works better. I'm gonna turn off. Oh. Oh. Okay. That works better than. See, this is what I was talking about earlier with the movement. Kind of creates a bristles effect, you know? Alright. Create contrast here. Depth jitter. Ah, that's looking better already. Okay. And then rendering, I'll just put that to intense blending maybe. No, uniform glaze. Intense glaze. Whatever. I'll just use the uniform glaze, I guess. Then bleed. Let's use that. Okay, see what that looks like. All right, that's working pretty well. All right, set that to be like that. Just put it all the way dark here. Yeah, that's a pretty good brush here. And do that. Yeah. And I think what I'll do last is I'll just yeah, actually, you know what? I'm gonna change this texture here. I'm gonna change it to a different one. Paper macro. Okay, brightness. There you go. And then yeah. Oh yeah. That's nice. Yeah. I like that. It's looking more like a traditional paint. And you know what? And I'll draw out intense glaze again. Oh yeah, intense glaze works pretty well. Then and it actually mixes the colors together, you see. But I think I prefer uniform glaze actually. So I think it's a little more predictable. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah. All right. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, last thing I'll do is I'll just mess with the tapering, and I will have it kind of affect the pressure here, and then also the size a little bit. So that way, yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, I'm liking that. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And Yeah, something like that. And the size, I'll have it affect the size quite a bit more. Okay, I like that quite a bit. And the last thing and you know what? I think I'm going to make it kind of, oh wait, let's use wrong one. Do this so that when it's lower opacity, it smudges more, and then when you're just pressing down a lot harder, it's very little smudging. Then I'll turn this up some. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I am liking that brush. Okay. See that? If I do it loosely, it smudges. But then if I apply more pressure, more goes down. Yeah. I like that brush a whole lot. All right. Well, I think the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name the brush. So, wet oil brush. Okay. Well, no, actually, let me just delete this one. All right. Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching this little demonstration. It wasn't really like super in depth about like how things work on a, under the hood level or anything like that. But I just wanted to kind of help bring some clarity and confidence, because I think a lot of people would realize that the Brush Studio is really not that difficult once you actually start using it. It's just, it looks intimidating, but once you get into it, it's fun. You can create some really fun effects, and I actually find that working on brushes actually gives me ideas for artwork to make. And if I don't, if I'm just like not feeling it, if I'm just really not feeling motivated to paint at all or anything, sometimes I'll just start making a brush, and then that'll inspire me. So yeah, I hope you all get something useful out of that. I hope that you all found that helpful, and I'll talk to you later.